Martin, I like, just in terms of like some examples of where I feel like, is there an interest in keeping hurling alive? And you've been on the ground to see this. Like, I know about the McGeehan Cup, which is up in Ulster, and this is the schools competition. Like, that gets played off very quickly by early December, a month before the other provinces. And the All Ireland finals aren't until March, whereas the Leinster final would be early February. Like last year, I think it was St. Louis played Kilcormac, wasn't it, Michael? And they had a 3-month break before the game. You look at the under-15A hurling competition, it's played off as a blitz, early in the stage when teams are still with their schools or whatever, and then they, have a knockout stage. The 2022 Senior C final, I know this for a fact, this is in the Ulster Colleges again, 𝘱𝘶𝘢𝘁𝘯 𝘈𝘴𝘴𝘰𝘮 against Carndonagh. The teams had to organise their own ref and their own pitch for the final. Like, Martin, it just seems that across the board, and like any attempts to kind of get this changed seems to be voted down. And is it as simple as like football people are just basically trying to eliminate hurling people? And I know like everyone's GA people and all that, and there's other parts of the country where hurling is trying to kill off football and so on and so forth. So it's not just going after football people, because we're all GA people. Like, but it does seem like some areas are just basically looking to kill off hurling.
Yeah. Look, Shane, I could write a book on it. The first thing is, situation is scary, because it could be passed in the blink of an eye. Because if you've got, we'll just say 32 counties voting on something like this, most of them just don't care. And that's no disrespect to the people themselves, they don't care. Very few people, unless you're living in those clubs, in those counties, understand. I didn't have a clue when I took up the job of National Hurling Development. I didn't have a clue what the situation was like. Sligo hurling, to me, it wasn't the blink of an eye. Leitrim hurling, I hadn't a clue how many clubs were in it. So, at a meeting, somebody at a top table here can throw figures up there and say this, say that, and suddenly the hands will go up and the guys they're banished from National League probably forever. So that's what can happen. Now, look at, it's not, and you never want it to become a football versus hurling scenario, because I would have said consistently, we're not expecting the football people who that's their game, and fair play to them. My game is hurling, their game is football. We're not expecting the football people to do the work for hurling. All you're expecting is not to be sabotaged. All you're expecting is to be a low player game. And I say again, like football in Kilkenny, it's not sabotaged. And whatever effort clubs, teams want to put into it, they're not hindered. That's all you're looking for. But that's not there. Now, to make the changes, it's a blind man could see what's needed. And that's more clubs across the top area of the country in particular. Because without clubs, you can't get games. And you definitely can't get games at your own level. And this is where fixtures come in. That if you run, on which we ran Tano, Cook-Cullen leagues, spanning 14 counties with 70 clubs, 70 teams on average involved at 13, 50 and 70 in an adult. And this major stumbling block was to get one night a week for maybe 6 or 7 weeks to play the games where there would be no interference. And that's the crux of the problem, right? When games are played and all that, these guys have to suffer that all the time. But just to be allowed, set up a competition and have it played uninterfered, that's what's needed. Now, to grow new clubs, nobody, and I'm talking nobody, county, provincial or national, has come behind me, and I'm not saying me personally, I'm saying me and the hurling, we'll say staff, the hurling people in these counties that are driving for it. Nobody has come and says, what do you need? What can we do? Because all we simply need is, for example, if you take Leitrim with 2 adult clubs, we need to grow that to 4, we need to grow to 8. Now, how do you do that? Well, you need people, first of all, that are prepared to try it. But then you have to give them a few pounds. You have to give them 3,000 or 4,000 a year for about 5 years to get them up and running, get them into a competition. There has to be a competition there. Now, how can you have a competition in Leitrim with 2 clubs? So you have to go wider. You have to go to the Tano where you cross the county boundaries. So these clubs, these competitions have to be backed to the hilt. Because if you've got a new club, you have to have the games for them. There's no point in the 3 of us starting up an ice hockey team, because we'll have nowhere to play and we'll have nobody to play. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Michael, you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I just think it's gas, Martin. Like, and with a commentator in there from, I think, Luca, who's actually a Fermanagh player, just talking about like the same week that comes up that Croke Park are spending 15 million on a redevelopment of the stadium. Like, imagine what 1/15 of that spread out amongst these 5 counties alone would do to potentially get good coaches in, get resources to potential new clubs, expand areas, and all this. It's a mad one. Whereas what they're trying, what the suggestion here is to take money that they spent over the last couple of years. They put some, I don't know, did they put a figure of 100,000 or something on it like that? But that money will not go there. It will not go there. That's not, it's unless you give a county, a certain amount of money, and it has to be allocated to hurling development, coaches, hurls, helmets, slitters, etc., etc., etc. Unless it's as clear as day as that, it will not happen. And to say that we're going to save money on X, Y, and Z, no league next year, and that's going to be basically put into another area, it's just not realistic. You've seen it in your own club. I've seen it in my own club as well. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. It goes somewhere else. And that's and another thing you mentioned there as well. Like you've played for years. Myself and Shane are still playing a small bit here. It's all about competition. That's all that's in your head. We're looking towards this competition, this game. We're playing Louth in a Division 3B game in the middle of February. Lovely. We're aiming for that. Then we're aiming for 2 weeks after. If you've nothing to aim for, like, lads are just going to step away. Lads are going to go playing football. Lads are going to go travelling. Lads are going to take years out. Lads mightn't even play for their club that year. The knock-on effects of this are huge. And I think it's so important that it's raised now. I don't know if you saw it last week, and I know, Shane, you commented on this. The Rules Committee of Football, we're going to get rid of, and hurling, obviously, we're going to get rid of black cards, red cards, yellow cards going into extra time in games. It was going to be a clean slate completely, so you could get a black card at the end of a game and it didn't carry over unless the big furore on social media has caused them to change their minds completely. Like they've gone back to exactly where they started now, and it's like they will carry over. So unless you have a debate about this now and raise it and show that people are disgusted about what they're going to do, it will just go through. And I'm sure you've been in boardrooms, Martin, where decisions are, okay, that's true, bang. And then it's like 3 months later, you realize, God, we're in trouble here or whatever. So it's so important to bring this into the public consciousness and get conversation about it, because people don't realize, with a couple of comments there, people saying that they didn't realize what was going on until we brought it up today. So it's just so important to have the voices of these counties out there and put it out there and let everybody know what their plight is.
And Martin, can I add in that, like, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe you're aware that a club in Derry more or less banned hurling and a different club had to be established because of it. I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah, look at Shane. That's one of many examples, and I was in the middle of that, and that particular club got up from the ashes from zero about 6 or 7 years ago, and I got word from one of their mentors to hope to have an adult team in the Cuchulainn League next year, but without any support whatsoever and with so many obstacles. But you see, it's a double-edged sword.
That's St. Finbarr's, isn't it, in Derry?
That's St. Finbarr's, correct, yeah. Unbelievable what they've done. And there's a similar club down in West Cork in Lerca Oak who actually bought their own property last year, and they didn't exist 8 years ago in the middle of a football area. And they could tell you stories as well. Down in Kildare, you have Round Towers, right? Smack in the middle of football. Have done the very, very same, put an adult club team together this year, starting with old fellas, and hope to enter a junior championship, I think, this year, if they haven't already done it. But you see, the big thing is people will watch this show and they watch other shows and they'll say, that's shocking, that's terrible. But they won't go into their counties, they won't go into their meetings and stand up and say, look, we need to sort out this. And I have sympathy for some county board chairpersons in football counties, because they may see the problems and they may have the little interest in hurling, but if they stand up and try and do something about, let's say, I don't know, just say Tyrone chairman says, look, we need to build this county up to 8 or 10 hurling clubs. So he'll be gone. He'll be out the door the following year, and that's apart from having all the work that they already have to do. So, the drive has to come from Croke Park. Croke Park has to set aside, and you're talking about money's there earlier and the seats going into the Cusack stand. But I mean, you know, if by some imagination in these 5 counties, we'll just say 100 grand was going to be saved by pulling the team out of the National League. Well, if somebody said, right, here's 5 checks for you of 100 grand, and you can use that in the county for the next 5 years. But I tell you one thing, that would work. We would have 10 clubs in all of those counties if you had that money. But that will never happen. You know, that money will not, there's not a snowball's hope in hell of that money being redirected into hurling. And that's the crux of the problem. But I was saying earlier, it's a double-edged thing. You know, chicken and egg. Which you need first, the teams or the games? You need both together. There's no point in building new teams if you haven't the games. So I'm pushing very, very strongly the last few years with some great people, you know, the 𝘱𝘗, the 𝘬𝑚 in these areas, a league that will give clubs at least 7 games and a good final if they get to it, and semi-final, guaranteed, unimpeded. That has to be there. If that's not there, there's no point in training, there's no point in building a club. And you've said it there already, what happens, you know, you take Longford, and I know some unbelievable hurling people in Longford. But what are they looking to? They're looking to a 3-team championship. So the 3 of us here, lads, we play each other, and the top 2 will play the final. And that could be run off on the weekend. Now, how can you train for the year for that? So they need to get out. And some of these clubs, they're getting into other counties, and that's all they can do. Like Carlow are surviving because they're bordering Wexford, they're bordering Kilkenny, where they can get in and get games. Okay? You can say the same with Naas at the moment. And Naas have come on so well, but they've been playing in Kilkenny for years. Wicklow, a non-stronghold of hurling, but there's no excuse for them not developing, because they can run into Dublin, they can run down to Wexford to get games. But you go up to Donegal, and you go up to Sligo, and you go up to Fermanagh, and you go to these places, where can you get? They can't get games. Now, the lads in the like of Longford, a few of them can slip into Westmeath, a few can slip into Roscommon. And Roscommon, they want to watch themselves as well, because, you know, if this thing if this snowball gets rolling, and suddenly if you don't have 5 clubs, you're gone out of the league, well, that'll creep up to 6 and 7, and suddenly Roscommon will be gone, and Fermanagh already going to be gone. Armagh will be gone. All of these clubs and counties will be gone, and hurling will die. And there are people in those counties that want the game to die.
Can I just ask you quickly, Martin? I've seen Celtic Challenge games down through the years, and it's great. But there's a fair element of lip service to it too, is there not? And it's promoted as the greatest thing ever. And it's great that they're, and particularly the likes of the Fermanagh and these, and they're all playing in competitions, and they'll park out numbers about inclusion rates and whatever. Yeah. That's not really where the problem is, though, is it?
No, well, you see, the Celtic Challenge started out, and it was wonderful. It was given, but it was targeting, we'll say, a county team, minors. It was targeting basically minor counties in these minor teams in these counties that weren't getting maybe any championship. And in the initial stages, it was brilliantly run and very well financed, and it was actually very, very good. But now it has become diluted. But that aside, from a county level, it was meeting the needs of your county team in all of these weaker counties. But it wasn't getting to the club level. And the biggest problem is the club level. Again, you go back and I just throw Longford at you, 3 clubs. So it's important that county team gets a minor match, a couple of matches at their own level, and we're getting that in the Celtic Challenge. But unless there's something there for the clubs, Longford will still have 3 clubs if they're lucky in 20 years' time. Leitrim will still have 2. So you have to start at the bottom, and you have to build the clubs. But while you're building the clubs, you have to keep looking after the existing clubs. Like I put a little thing to everybody that I could put it there. Croke Park, every committee, including CCC, the whole lot of them, and it was consolidate, nurture, grow. Now behind that was about 20 pages, if not 40 pages of documents. But consolidate means the clubs that are there at the moment, we have to make sure to have at least one meaningful competition every year. And I'm saying 10 games. So if to have that, the clubs that are there have something to get out of Bedford, have something to train for, consolidate them. The next one then was to nurture those existing clubs. You know, they have to travel unbelievable distances to get to games. Like there's 2 clubs in Donegal, and to play each other in a friendly, they're 80 miles apart. 80 miles apart. My club would be in Dublin and home while they'd be travelling up. So Consolidate was to put finances into those clubs by, to help them participate in these competitions, to help them get more coaching, to help them build their clubs. And then the big one was grow. Grow is grow new clubs. And growing new clubs is double-edged. It's growing the club and it's growing the schools in that area. And that will cost money. That will take resources. Not a huge amount. Like 40 grand a year in each of those counties would do unbelievable work. Unbelievable work.
Martin, you left the role as the National Hurling Development Manager after 5 years. I think it was towards the end of 2021. And like I've just seen it here in an article on the GA's website that you did 1,000 coaching sessions, 300,000 miles clocked. So obviously you were up and down the country, boots on the ground, all that kind of stuff. Has the position ever been filled since? Has the void in any way since been filled? Has whatever you had looked at doing and planned on doing, has that been followed through on?
Well, Shane, look, I didn't leave the position. My contract was up. Simple as that. The contract was up. I had a 5-year contract, and it was up. And unfortunately, COVID came in on top of it. So I'm not saying I was looking to stay. I wasn't asked to stay. I couldn't say I was looking to stay. I probably wouldn't have stayed unless I was going to get, I suppose, support for projects that would be really, really meaningful. But that aside, COVID kicked in, and at that time, the GA understandably were taking redundancies because finances, they didn't know where they were going. So my role then wasn't reinstated for anybody. Now, I had a rollover ready for whoever would come into the new role to continue on, but it hasn't been filled, and that's a disaster. Because, I'm not saying me, I'm saying we, and I say we. I covered every county, but I concentrated personally on what I call the Taun area, that line from Galway to Dublin, north of it, because that's where the greatest need was, and some unbelievable hurling people up there. So, I listen to those people and I know exactly what they need. I didn't tell them, they told me, and I could see it. I mean, the Taun Og was instigated by an Armagh man, because he was a GDA coach up in that country, and he knew exactly what was needed, and I fell in behind him then and backed it to the hilt, and that's where I was coming from. Now, the role itself badly needs to be replaced, because unfortunately, hurling people, hurling staff, they're governed by football people, and they're great football people. I've met so many and I like them all. They're good people, but their game is football. There's no point in having me heading up a football competition or a football committee, because I don't have the particular interest. So hurling needs to be governed by hurling people. Decisions for hurling need to be made by hurling people. And that's part of the problem. But, that overall role needs to be replaced. And not just replaced, but several more people put in that can get a project which, revolves around consolidate, nurture, grow, and drive it. Does that answer your question, Shane?
Yeah, it does. It does. Like, are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic in terms of where hurling is going with participation rates? I mean, grand, some of the games that we're seeing involving Limerick and other top teams are spectacular. We've never seen such quality of hurling. But, is it rotting beneath that? I mean, is it basically going to be a case where, 12 counties, 15 counties will end up playing and everywhere else won't even, as time goes on?
Sure, look at Shane, there's no doubt about it, but it's scandalous. I mean, you and I are born into counties where hurling is just, you couldn't kill it, and it's unreal. But, I mean, if I was living in Cavan, I couldn't say with a hand on the heart that I would have been involved in hurling. I couldn't. Like, when you see the hardship these guys have to go through, and the people over the teams, I would be probably certain that I would not be involved, because you get so blown off and you get so blown beaten, you pull away from it. And that is the problem. Now, nobody cares. The standard of hurling at inter-county level, right down, the ring record, right down to the Lowry Mar, it's unbelievable based on where these guys are coming from. Like, let it be the Leitrim hurlers, let it be the Longford hurlers, let it be the Fermanagh hurlers, based on 1, 2, 3 clubs. That standard is unbelievable. Right? So that is where the problem is. But as a nation, as an organisation, we are absolutely, totally neglecting half the country when it comes to playing that game. You know, I had a dream, or if you want to call it a dream or a desire one time, that hurling in every county would at least be at the level of football in Kilkenny. And people laughed at me. And I said, look, at what I'm saying is Kilkenny are self-sustainable in football. We have 3 grades of a competition at every age level. And whatever that means, it means 6, 8 or 10 games a year, uninterrupted, and they're played. And if you had that in hurling in every single county, that would be some dream. But you know what? You couldn't achieve that if you stuck 8 counties together. I couldn't get 3 grades of hurling if I stuck 8 counties together up there. That's the challenge. That's how difficult it is. And when you talk about mileage, travelling, you know, above in Mayo, there's a club, and to get one hurling match, they travel 25 kilometres. If they want a second, they go 50. Now, talk about the boys in Donegal. So even to run these Táin Óg leagues, our biggest challenge was to try and keep travel distance for a halfway venue to no more than an hour. That's what you're dealing with. Like, I could get at home in my club, I could get 15 football challenge matches within a half an hour's drive of me. But these guys in hurling, they can't get a match. And then the counties that are so small, they're playing the same old team, the same old team, the same old team. It's a massive, massive challenge. But if the resources and the interest were put into it, and if a team of enthusiastic hurling people were given the brief and given the backing, it would snowball. And that club above in Derry, St. Finbarrs, and the one below in Lake Rogue in Cork and Roundtowers in Kildare, they have proven what can be done with zero help and enthusiasm.